Hello everyone and welcome to the den. And today is my second round of canning and I am canning potatoes. So I have my potatoes here. They had been soaking, I have it in the colander, and then I have about 10 pounds here. And usually when I do 10 pounds of potatoes, I will be able to I'll be able to fill 7 quarts. So today I'm actually going to be doing pints. I have my pint jars over here washed and they are drying, as well as my lids and my rings just washed in hot soapy water. Nothing fancy, does not have to be sterilized or anything like that. It's not required. They're going in a pressure canner. Anything that's a microorganism or anything like that, it's going to die. So, but you do have to blanch potatoes, okay? So I have a pot of water boiling on the stove, and I pre-measured my water so that I know when I drop this in there to bring it to a boil that the water's not going to overflow. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. Once the water comes back to a boil, I'll let them boil for 2 minutes, and then we will move on from there. We can start getting them in the jars. All right, so here's my pot of boiling water. It's a nice, ooh, that's very hot. It's a rolling boil. I'm just gonna set my first batch straight in. Okay, and those are covered with water there, you can see. As soon as that comes back to a boil, I'm gonna set a timer for 2 minutes, and then I will get them out into a colander and I can start putting them in the jars. I'm gonna do 2 batches, so I'm gonna have to kind of work kind of fast. And then I'm going to add just boiling water, and I'm just going to get my electric kettle out and I'm going to put the water in that, and then that's how we're going to fill those. So yeah, as soon as this comes to a boil, I'll start the timer. Okay, so my first round of potatoes is done and I'm filling the jars here now. We're going to go with 1 inch of headspace on these. My water is heating in the kettle, so I'm just going to push these kind of down in under this ring. These are regular mouth pints, so I'm using my funnel for that. Put that in my salt. I chose pint jar. Normally I would do quarts for potatoes because most of the time we eat potatoes, you know, in the evening for dinner. But I know that my daughter especially would like to have potatoes sometimes with her breakfast, so a pint makes more sense for that type of thing. So I'm going to do these pints. And this is 10 pounds of potatoes here. And I think I should be able to get at least 14 pints. Normally I do a bigger chunk than this, and this is kind of a dice. Because again, like for potatoes, like for breakfast hash, this is just a better kind of a cut. Miles, be quiet. The only other thing that you're going to add to these potatoes is one half teaspoon of salt, of canning salt. And then you're just going to add your kettle water or boiling water. If you don't have a kettle, that's perfectly fine. You can add you can just boil a pot of water and use that. Just don't use the potato water that you boiled the potatoes in, because it's going to be very, very starchy. Now these are russet potatoes. You're supposed to do like a white potato. That's what it says in the canning book, which I guess is like a Yukon Gold. But I have canned russet potatoes with no problems. They do have a starch, but I've also canned other white potato, you know, the actual white potatoes, and they are starchy too. So I feel like it's the same exact product. So I got these for 5 pounds. They were $1.47. So when I saw that that was one of the deals at the local grocery store, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to pass that up because that's too good of a deal. So I'm waiting for my next batch to get done. I'm going to get the water in these here soon, and then I can get these into the canner while I do my other set. Okay, so I'm all done here with getting them in the jars. You will need a 1 inch headspace on these. I'm just going to add my salt to the ones that I haven't put water in yet. Half teaspoon of salt, because these are pints. You can leave the salt out if you don't want salt in them. That's perfectly fine too. This is purely just for taste. And like I said, 1 inch headspace. I think I ended up with 14 pints, which is exactly the same as 7 quarts, which is what I normally get out of 10 pounds of potatoes. Oh, we're gonna be low on water. Oh no. Okay. At this point, you're gonna debubble. These jars are really hot. Just running this around every side and down the middle. Okay, so now I'm just making sure that my headspace looks good. Some of them need a little bit extra water. And that's fine. Just when after you debubble, sometimes you do have to add a little bit more because the air, you know, lowers your level line of your water. Oops, that was too much. Careful because these jars are hot. That made a huge mess. It's hard to tell when the water's coming out when the kettle is low. Okay, now at this point, you can just wipe your rims with a wet paper towel. There's no fat in these, so you don't have to worry about vinegar. If you want to use vinegar, you absolutely can do that. But we're just gonna wipe the rims here, just to make sure there's no food particles. At the same time, I'm checking for any type of nicks or cracks that may cause these jars not to seal. I do that when I wash them too, but you never know. Could miss something. Okay, and now we're just gonna put lids and rings. Just grab your lids. All right, then you're just gonna put your bands on and just finger tight. Like I said, these are hot, so careful. If you have like one of those gloves you can wear, that'd be good. All right, and then I'll come right back and we'll put them in the canner. Okay, so now we're gonna load up the canner. This is gonna be 2 layers. So I have my rack here. If you don't have an extra rack, it's okay, you can stagger them. But a rack makes it easier just because they just sit better in there sometimes. Sometimes the bumps on the rack is kind of a pain too. Now I can get 9 pints in the bottom, but I'm gonna put the same amount on the top as is on the bottom. And I just only had 14, so put my rack in there. Okay, so that's it for that. I'm gonna put my lid on. So again, this is a Presto canner. Yeah, it's a Presto canner. So you arrow to arrow, and then you'll feel it. Let me take this off. As it sits on this little lip here, you can feel it go down, and then you turn it. It won't turn unless it's seated right. Turn it, and then all we're gonna do now is leave it like this, and we're waiting for this pipe to start venting steam. And as soon as that happens, I'll bring you back and tell you what to do next. Okay, here we're at a steady vent. We've made it to a steady vent, and you can see the steam pretty solidly coming out of this vent pipe. I'm gonna set my timer for 10 minutes. And what we're doing in this time frame is we are letting the steamer vent out the air to replace the air with steam inside of the pot. Because the steam and the heat are what build the pressure so that the temperature will raise enough past boiling. It's like 240 degrees or 250 degrees to kill all the microorganisms and any type of botulism spores. So I'm gonna set my timer for 10 minutes and I'll come back. So my timer is going off for my 10-minute vent stage. So now I'm just gonna take my weight here, and this is a 15-pound weight because that's what the Presto canner has. And I'm just gonna drop it over top of that pipe. And now what I'm doing is I'm waiting for this to build pressure. Once this gets up to 13 pounds of pressure, that's the pressure that I need to be at my elevation. So once this gauge gets up to 15 pounds of pressure, that's what we're waiting for now. You can see it's already slightly starting to rise. Once we get to the 13 mark, then we can set our timer. And these are potatoes, so they're only gonna take 35 minutes because they're pints. If you were doing quarts, it would be 40 minutes. So as soon as we get up to pressure, I'll bring you back and we will set the timer. Okay, so we're at the right pressure, so I'm gonna set my timer for 35 minutes. and we're gonna let this just kind of sit here. And I'm gonna keep mine between 13 and 15. It's definitely okay to go above your pressure point, just you can't let it go below. So once this 35 minutes is up, I'll bring you back and show you what the next step is. Okay, so the processing time is done, 35 minutes is over. All you do now is just turn your heat off and nothing else. That's all you do. Just turn the heat off and you're gonna wait for this gauge to go all the way down to 0. So when we get to that point, I'll bring you back and show you what you would do next. All right, so we're at 0 pressure now. We're just gonna tilt this and make sure we can get this off with no steam, and we're good. So this has already been sitting here a long time, so I know that it's okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and take my lid off. You're gonna twist and turn up if you can, like lift your lid up away from your face. It's hard for me to do that with the microwave here, so I'm just gonna take this off and move it fast because steam is going to start coming out of here and it's still very hot. All right. Okay, so they look good. I'm gonna let them sit in here for at least 5-10 minutes. I can hear them still, there's still lots of air coming out of the jars. So I'm gonna leave them set for a little while, and then all I'm gonna do after this is once I think they're good enough to come out, I will take them over to my towel on the counter, leave them there overnight, and then tomorrow I'll check all the seals and see if they all sealed or not, and I'll wash the jars and remove their bands, and then that'll be it, and I'll just put them on my pantry shelf. So that's it for potatoes. They're pretty easy. The only bad part is that you have to blanch them for 2 minutes, but it's not really that big of a deal. It's still an easy thing to put in your canner. So that's gonna be it for me today. If you haven't already subscribed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did and give me a like, and I'll see you in the next video.